Hey there everyone, my name is Dr. Ibrahim and in this video we are going to discuss Kennedy's classification for removed partial denture. Now before starting off with the lecture, the first question that comes to our mind is that why do we even require a classification system? Uh, Well, the classification systems are not just so that you memorize them, rather, they have their own purpose. And the major purpose of that classification system is that you can communicate with your fellow dentist. If you certain person says that I'm using this classification or the arch is this classification, then the other dentist should be easily able to identify. Among such requirements, of course, when you need communication, there are certain requirements for each classification. These requirements include that when you say that a particular arch is that particular classification, then you should be able to visualize it without looking at the cast or okay, tell me how many teeth are missing or which teeth are missing. Secondly, the classification system should be able to help you identify whether the processes that you are going to provide is going to be a tooth supported processes or a tooth and tissue supported processes. And lastly, of course, it should be universally acceptable. It's not like that classification system uh, is acceptable in one part of the world, but no one knows about it on the in the other part of the world. So it should be acceptable among the whole dental community. At least one should know about it. Now, having that in perspective, there are numerous classifications that were designed and were to a certain point suggested, but the commonly used one is the Kennedy's classification, and of course, it has certain rules for its easier applications given by Applegate. So today we are going to discuss the Kennedy's classification along with Applegate rules. Now, Kennedy classified the arches into four major classes, and the class one uh, includes a bilateral edentulous free end saddle. A picture would be much easier to visualize that. So all this picture and the whole lecture has been made from McCracken's Mool partial denture prosthodontics. So as you can see in this cast, that there are teeth missing posterior to the premolar on one side and on the other side as well. So the edentulous area is located posterior to the natural remaining teeth bilaterally. So this is considered as class 1. Now, the class 2 situation is similar to the class 1 situation, but instead of having bilateral edentulous posterior areas, we have a unilateral free end saddle. And that means that uh, teeth are missing posterior to the natural teeth on one side of the arch. Um, so this is Kennedy's class 2. In class 3, now comes the portion where you have a bounded segment. That means that you have edentulous areas which have teeth present both anterior and posterior to it. And this is an example where you have missing second premolar, first molar, or maybe second molar. I think it's just second premolar and first molar, and which is bounded by a second molar and a first premolar. So it's a posterior bounded saddle and it does not cross midline. So this is an example of class 3. And lastly, we have a Kennedy's class 4, which is again a single bounded saddle, but for a edentulous space to be classified as class 4, it has to cross midline. That means that anterior teeth need to be involved, at least the incisors need to be involved, central incisors especially, for it to be considered as class 3. Just like in this situation, it's an anterior bounded saddle in which the midline has been involved. So these are the four major classifications that were given by Kennedy. Now, based on this slide, let me turn off the video if possible. No, I cannot turn it off, but okay, you can see these two pictures. Now, based on these Kennedy's four classification, there comes certain situation that which you simply cannot classify, and just by knowing about Kennedy's classification, where you have multiple bounded saddles like these situations, or a free and saddle and then bounded saddles. So in such cases, uh, these questions or these issues were resolved by Applegate's rule that further simplified the Kennedy's classification. And those rules were that and the classification should follow rather than precede any extraction of the that might alter the original classification. So suppose you have uh, first and second molar missing, and the third molar is present but is um, being planned to be extracted. Then the arch would not be a Kennedy's class 3, rather it should be classified as Kennedy's class 2, because the third molar would in any case be extracted and the arch would later on again reclassified. So it's better to classify it before that till your treatment plan, according to your treatment plan that was finalized for it. Rule number two is that if a third molar is missing and it's not to be considered, rather it's not to be replaced, then it is not considered in the classification. And the rule number three, if the term molar is present and is to be used as an abutment, then it is considered a force in the classification because you are uh, applying some forces on it. Maybe you are using it for support and retention. There is a clasp assembly on it. So yes, if a third molar is being used, then it is considered in the classification. And same goes for the second molar as per rule number 4. If the second molar is missing, the same rule applies, and if it's not to be replaced, then you won't consider it in the classification. Rule number 5, the most posterior edentulous area, which means like a situation in this where you have a free end saddle on one side and a bounded saddle on this side, on the other side, and another bounded saddle in the anterior segment. So you have three different edentulous areas. The one most posterior would be the one with, in which the most posterior tooth is missing. So in this case, you have a free end saddle where there are no posterior teeth present. So this arch would be classified according to this edentulous area. So which means this is a Kennedy's class 2. Now, what about the other edentulous areas? What to do about them? Well, edentulous areas which do not determine the classification, like the ones bounded saddles in this picture, are referred to as modification number, and they are designated by their numbers. So there are two modification numbers, and then it would be Kennedy's class 2 modification 2. Now, the extent of again modification is not considered only the number of additional edentulous areas. It's not important. It means that no matter how large or small the edentulous area is, it doesn't matter. The number of additional edentulous areas matters. Like in this situation, you have um, two edentulous areas. The one would determine the classification. In this case, both have are the same, so you can use as easily classify this arch into Kennedy's class 3. And you have one long edentulous span, so it's considered as modification 1. But over here, you have multiple single missing tooth edentulous areas. Again, the most posterior one, which is Kennedy's class 3, would be considered for classification, and the rest of the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would be considered for modification. So this is a Kennedy's class 3 modification 5 edentulous area as per Applegate's rule. And lastly, we have rule number 4, which means that uh, class 4 has no modification areas because it is the most anterior edentulous area, and of course any edentulous area posterior to it would rather determine the classification. So what are the advantages of Kennedy's classification? Well, just like we discussed that there are certain criteria. The advantages are that they permit immediate visualization of the partially edentulous arches. You can easily tell if someone says if it's class 1 or class 4, you can easily tell which teeth might be involved, and then it allows the distinction between a tooth supported versus tooth and tissue supported prosthesis. And furthermore, it also permits a logical approach towards designing of the processes. Since now that we know whether the processes or the edentulous area would be tooth supported or tooth and tissue supported, we can easily design a processes with appropriate class assemblies and rest sheets for that particular edentulous area, which was classified according to Kennedy's classification. And lastly, of course, the Kennedy's classification is universally acceptable, and it is known over almost all of the parts of the world, to my knowledge, of course. So that is it from my side, and thank you. I hope this lecture helps you in understanding the Kennedy's classification. Let me know if you like this video. I will keep posting more, and my plan is to keep on uploading the lectures that I have made for removal prosthodontics and face prosthodontics. I hope that helps all the students and everyone.